In this video, I just want to talk about, are you grieving? And I really want, this is a topic that is so serious to me. I am amazed that we don't know what's going to happen in this life. We don't know if we're going to go before our parents, if our parents are going to go before us. We don't know if we're going to have to bury our siblings. We don't know what's going to happen in this life. But I see a lot of people grieving, and it grieves my heart because I think about, how is it that I could be married to a man for 20 years, he passes away, and I try to go on with my life day after day? I don't get any help. I don't seek any support. Nobody knows. But I've been watching, I've been just observing. I had my grandmother passed away some years ago, and then I had several aunts pass away, and it really, I never knew grief. I never knew what the response was for grief. I don't know the timeline. I don't know if there is a timeline. I think that we're all different. But I believe that we cannot grieve on our own. I believe that we have to be honest in our emotions and how we feel. And I don't believe that we ought to be making decisions as we're grieving, major decisions. I don't think we should do that. I don't think we should jump in relationships while we're grieving. And I see a lot of people hurting. And I've been watching this young lady who her husband passed away. And grief looks different. It looks different. It's painful. It looks painful on the body. It looks painful. She speaks with pain. She's real smart. That's not what I'm saying. She's smart. When she was working, she was the top of her profession, but grief looks different. And I'm just wondering why, if we are grieving, like, things are different. Like, I can't not be changed if my relative passes away. If I have multiple relatives pass away at one time, I'm going to be changed. I'm going to be different. I'm going to have to grieve in my own time and space. And it seems, and I know that this is one step of grief is anger. And I see anger in this particular woman every single week. And I'm really, really shocked that we don't get help. We grieve by ourselves. Nobody knows. But with this particular person, I see grief all over her. I see the pain that has swallowed her up. I see her attitude. In my opinion, she was so sweet before, but everything that she spews out is anger and complacency. And I get it. We could be mad at the world because we were expecting us to die before our spouses, or our spouses to live a longer time, or our relatives to live a longer time than they did. We don't have no control over that. But I believe that if you are grieving, you should get support. Like, there are all types of support groups to help you if you're grieving. I believe that, we ought to be praying and standing in the gap for people who are grieving. I believe we should be fasting for healing. I believe that that we need to be supported through counseling or therapy or through our pastoral relationships. I think that somebody doesn't die and leave us unscathed. We gonna be touched by it. Every move we make is gonna be through grief. And if we don't heal that grief, and I'm not telling anybody how to grieve or how to heal or I don't know that, but I do know that it's amazing to see people grieve and they haven't uttered a word. They haven't shed a tear. They haven't said anything to anybody. Nobody knows how they really feel. But one thing I know is that you can only push pain down so far before that pain, that grief comes to the surface and everybody feels it. You bleed all over everybody. You cannot be affected by it. So I always encourage people, if you've lost a relative or two, read some books on grief, work through the exercises, get support, join a support group, go every week to somebody in a group of people who have been through what you're going through or going through it right now that can relate. People can tell you all day they love you and they support you and they're there for you. But it's another thing if you sitting across the way from a sister or brother who know exactly what you're going through. They've been through the exact same thing. We all hurting together, but we have a relationship because we know what it's like. We know the daily struggles. We know what it's like. But I wholeheartedly believe in getting help. I just don't believe that the grief stops on its own. Maybe we quiet it. Maybe we do. I think to a certain extent we might. I think, but sometimes I believe people die from a broken heart because they couldn't grieve. They couldn't figure out how to get the emotions out. They couldn't figure out how to process the emotions. But I know that unprocessed emotions come out in all kind of negative ways through anger and all these different bitterness, and it does not look good on us. And so if we're grieving, we need to get help. We need to get support. And I'm not telling you how to get support. I'm just telling you that these are some avenues I didn't even know existed, but there's all kind of support groups for everything that you can think about. Any type of grieving situation, there's a support group from it all over the country. Most of them are free. And even if it's not, it's good to if you have to pay so that you can be healed, so you can move forward, so you can live your life and not be stuck in that grief for 10, 15 years. That doesn't make any sense to me. But if you're grieving, get help. There's support groups, there's books, there's counselors, therapists, there's pastoral or pastors who are available, who've been trained, who know how to help people who are grieving. Just don't stay stuck in the grief. It doesn't go away. It doesn't. It doesn't go away. It plays tricks on your mind. You're not the same. So I encourage people who are grieving to get help. I see people that are swallowed by the grief. I see that in this particular person, there's no joy. There's emptiness. And I'm surprised that nobody said, she's got like a lot of people who are close to her, and nobody said, you need to get some help. You need help. You need help. And it not in a demeaning way. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we need to be able to tell people when they need help. And so this made me think about the church. For me, is a safe space. It's just that you can go to church and you could be hurting, and God is speaking through other people. Maybe it's a hug, maybe it's a word of encouragement, maybe it's a scripture, maybe it's pricking in the spirit, a whisper. But I believe in, if you're grieving, to go to church. If you believe in God, you're a Christian. If you're not a Christian, I still believe in going to church, and that let God's perfect will be done. But I believe that when we go to church, we can get help with our grief. We can have people who hug us and hold our hands, and they don't know. If you ever been around somebody who they didn't have to know where the hurt was, but they could pray, they could sympathize, they know what it feels like, they know what it looks like. They've been around it long enough to know that something is grieving you, that you've experienced something that hasn't healed. And they can hold your hand, they can pray for you, they can hug you in a way to let you know that they love you and they support you. And so church is a safe place for me. It's a safe place to go. Somebody can hug me, I can hug somebody else. You never know. I love hugs because you never know who benefits. In most cases, both people benefit, but sometimes you can just go and hold somebody's hand. Somebody can look at you. Somebody can say a word, give you a word of encouragement, a scripture. Somebody can say something that's going to help you, that's going to benefit you. So if you're grieving, don't grieve alone. I don't believe in grieving in isolation. I don't believe that it's effective at all. I believe we got to talk this stuff out. We got to say what we feel. We got to process the emotions. And I didn't know this, years ago, but now I know it. I see it all the time. People are dying, and family members are left trying to pick up the pieces, trying to figure out how to move forward, trying to figure out what to do with all these emotions. And we got to figure out how to process them. We got to start processing these emotions. So just think about this today. If you're grieving, can you get help? Where can you get help? Can you do a quick Google search and search for grieving group, whatever your situation is, whether it's parent passing away grieving group, a spouse, whatever it is, there's a group for it. You can just do a Google search and it'll tell you where it is in your area or where the closest one is. If it's not one close, that I'm sure they have online ones. There's, you can Google it. I mean, you can go to Amazon. There's all kind of books on grieving. You can just read a page a day or 2 pages a day to help yourself move forward. But I just ask that you please get help if you're grieving.